Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. Again, welcome and thank you all for joining us today. Um, just want to give you a brief introduction of who we are. So today we are joined, myself, my name is Joy An, and I'm the program manager for the MTM program. So I come to you with a lot of experience in higher education, and also Verna Rodriguez, our executive director, is here as well. And she comes to us with decades of experience within the medical device industry. She's also a Cal grad. So we're super excited that she is with us today. She is kind of a secret sauce of the MTM program. She has so much wealth of knowledge within the industry. So she is our little treasure trove.
Thanks.
So today we're going to go ahead and go over some data and trends of how the Masters of Translational Medicine program sets you up in different career pathways that students take. We also have alumni that are joining us on this session to give you their perspective. We'll go over what the program offers in terms of professional development opportunities and resources. But one of our goals here is to, build the bridges to take students from where they've been and to where they want to go, right? So this program will provide like the scaffolding, the structure, and the support that you get to really launch you into the next phase of your career. So what's different and exciting about this program is the different pathways and avenues that our alumni take. So as we go through this presentation, you'll see that we have people from a variety of backgrounds come into the program. They also go out into a variety of different careers. And, what's one of the things that ties it all together is just the students' drive to want to help others, right? So there's the variety and backgrounds of our student body are very important to us and kind of what makes us unique and what makes this program really special. So I'm going to go ahead and pass along to Verna so she can talk about who our students are coming into the program and where they go.
Thank you, Joy. So diversity in backgrounds drives diversity in career paths after graduation. The breadth of the curriculum also plays a role in opening up career options. So it's important as you come into a program like this that you talk to other students, talk to folks like myself, professors, because there's a lot of different courses that you can take to basically kind of tailor your MTM experience here. So background is, it's a big determiner, but it can also play a strong role in what people decide to do next. So folks come to us, as you can see here, with a variety of backgrounds. Engineering undergraduate degrees are much more likely to go into R&D engineering roles, but not necessarily. Those with clinical backgrounds most likely can continue on practicing and other things like that. But let me just focus in a little bit on this graph so you can see. The number of students is what's on the y-axis. So you can see we started with our first group of MTM students just a little over 10 years ago. Our first graduating class was the 2010 and 11 class, and you can see they were all engineering backgrounds, mostly Bio-E and some from other engineering backgrounds. And then we grew the program purposefully to be more broad and also basically kind of mimic the cross-functional nature of when you're out in industry. And also because the classes are broad that we offer, we wanted to be able to understand and help other folks outside of bioengineering understand what it takes to develop a medical device or drug and launch it into the market. So you'll see as the years went by that we grew our program. We always have a few MDs, pharmacists, or nurses in our program. That's the ones that are in the blue on the very top. We also have a pretty, always somewhere between 25, say to 30% other life sciences, biology, biochemistry. So those are a huge important part of our program, because this really makes a difference, like I said, in the capstone projects that students work on, because it's a groups of about 3 or 4 students, and we try to mix up the students so that we have different backgrounds and they learn from each other, especially because we have folks that come with some work experience into our program, others that maybe just have internship experience. And the breadth and the length of work experience also varies from typically more like 1 to 2 years, but we also have folks that have 5, even 10 years of working experience come into our program. And this makes for a really rich learning environment. So one thing I wanted to help answer the question that you might have is, what do alumni do after graduating? So what we did to basically really find out what that was is we sent out in April 2019 to all of the alumni at the time. That was probably over 100 folks or so at that point, maybe even a couple hundred. But basically what's important to know is that 90 folks responded. And so that's what this graph is showing. What they were asked about career goals before they started the MTM program, and then about the positions that they held after graduation. So this first question that you can see is, what were your career goals at the start of the program? So you can see this first black bar is all about plans were to work in industry. A small percentage, 10%, were to work in academia, and also smaller, like other education or something similar to a current position. A startup entrepreneur was as much as 25%, and then folks that wanted to go into clinical practice. So pre-med or even current MDs that want to go back to practicing in the clinical space. So, and you can see that in the reality, first positions after completing the MTM program, that black bar, and I'll show you it here, was actually by far the most common experience after MTM. So that was the reality. So that was a lot more than what folks kind of expected. And so being a professional master's program, these positions align really well with what you'll be learning in the program. Okay, but another interesting trend that you might notice here is like, okay, if the black bar goes way up, then what were the bars that went down? Well, you can see that that green bar is that a lot of people in their mind want to pursue a startup, an entrepreneurship type of position. And the reality, though, is that that is a lot lower than what people start out with. That's not to say that it's not a great path to go, but what you'll see is that in the next bar, like what's your current position, that green bar goes up, because typically these entrepreneurial roles and startup type roles will come with a little bit more of experience. So more think that they want to be entrepreneurs than they actually end up doing it. But also the same you can see is true for clinical practice. We've had a lot of folks that start thinking that they're going to go on for an MD or maybe a nursing role, but mostly we have a lot of bioengineers especially that think, or maybe even the life sciences majors that are kind of planning that this is what they're going to do in a gap year or two. And then once they get into the program, they really realize how much they love another aspect of the healthcare space. It might be healthcare policy. It might be going into a medical affairs or clinical affairs role. And so that bar also goes down, and people end up, or they might be some combination. Some go on for their clinical practice, but they keep an aspect or some time in their career set aside for doing entrepreneurship, working with engineering entrepreneurs in the industry. So it's also important to note that there are a lot of different career paths. For our program specifically, and this data was taken from just, basically the folks from 2010 all the way up to about 2020, 21. Most of our folks, as you can see, go into the second bar here from the top, MedTech. And for those of you who don't know, MedTech means specifically medical device development. And right behind that is biotech. So biotech would be, say, biologics, genomics, perhaps drug development. So that's the next highest. So our students typically go into those categories. Digital health is growing quite a bit. It's a much higher number now than it was when our program started. And then you can see some of these other areas that folks go into, like I had mentioned before, like academic research, medical school, other grad school, consulting, and then other different positions and areas of career that are less usual, but possible. In terms of paths within sectors, this slide is meant to show you that the industry is pretty broad. Like I said, there's medtech, which is devices, biotech, which covers basically pharma and genome, and also biologics. And then diagnostic type products kind of overlap a little bit with pharma and device, but they're kind of a area of their own a lot of times. And digital obviously has overlap with all of these. So whatever kind of a company within the healthcare industry you go into, you're going to have all of these different roles. Okay, so whether you're pharma or med tech device, you're going to have these roles of individual contributor, leadership and management, context support. I'll get into that a little bit more. And then also understanding, well, is your role a technical role, or is it more of a managerial role, or finance or something like that? Clinician innovator and entrepreneur. So let's drill down into those a little bit. What's important that I wanted to go into about context roles is that these are a lot of times roles that people don't necessarily think about, because they can be supporting roles within one of these different companies, or they can be a supporting role in terms of being a company that supports a major drug or device company. So what would that be? It could be like Westpac, for instance, is a company that's here in the Bay Area. It is a company that does packaging testing to standards for medical device companies. There's also companies that do biologics testing, toxicity testing, and they also support medical device and drug companies to test to standards so that those products then can get data that they can then submit to the FDA and other regulatory agencies. So, and then within a company themselves, you wouldn't necessarily just find engineering roles such as R&D, but you can find roles that support getting a product out there, such as clinical research, quality assurance and quality control, regulatory affairs, risk management, which is also oftentimes within the quality department, business development, preclinical marketing, and then also portfolio planning. Portfolio meaning, what's your product portfolio and your intellectual property look like? And how do you see that over the next 2 to 5 or even 10 years out? So they're a really important space to make sure that you are aware of and consider in terms of a possible career path. A lot of our MTM grads are really well suited to fill these roles because they require a big picture view and a broad understanding of the whole commercialization process. So you can think and talk more strategically about the product development process within your company and even across a variety of companies if you're going to work in a context support company. So let me show you a breakdown of how alumni jobs and titles fit into some of these categories. We've got management, technical, clinical, and academic and research. The The sum of the percentages is not quite equal to 100 because some categories are double counted, such as senior R&D engineer. But just taking a little bit of time to look at that, under management and leadership, you're going to see job titles such as founder, CEO, manager. What you might see is general manager, which is often the head of a division, but then also senior manager, a more junior manager, or you might see manager 1, manager 2 types titles. A senior position could be a senior quality engineer, a senior R&D engineer, it could be a senior regulatory associate, etc. A lead, same thing in terms of cross-functional. Specifically, technical roles are usually going to be scientist or engineering type titles. Medical students are often can come into these clinical roles. You might be a resident or a physician, or within a company, you may become a clinical research associate or a coordinator of clinical trials. And even what's not listed here, but for folks who have an MD background that come into our program, a lot of folks, if they decide not to go into clinical practice any further, they can apply for medical affairs positions within companies, because you need to have a medical background to be able to make assessments on devices and drugs in terms of how those are performing in clinical trials, if there's complaints that come back, etc. And then on the academic side of things, obviously professor, PhD candidates, and research. So this is a snapshot from 2022 that was using available LinkedIn data on all of our alumni. And so now I'm going to transition it back to Joy, and she will talk about some common industry pathways and job titles.
Okay, so we kind of see the general areas that our alumni have gone down, and but I just want to drill down a little bit into specific job titles to give you an idea, right? So as you are even looking at possible different companies, right? What are the types of roles that our alumni go into, right? So the first one is in product management, right? So it's really like the intersection of business, technology, and user experience to strategically drive the vision and development and market launch. So you see that how our program is really well suited for a product management type role, right? So whether it's underneath the product management umbrella, those are different roles that our students have gone into. So next is the technical side, right? So there's a lot of different technical roles that our program really sets you up to do well in. And you'll see that each has a different little, type of skill set, but it's the doing, the building, the designing, the testing. And there's a bunch of different like engineering and data science roles within the technical. So our degree has a lot of technical expertise to it, and they set you up well for those technical type roles. The next part is clinical research. So whether that's a manager, a clinical trial manager, right? So it's the branch of healthcare science that really determines the safety and effectiveness of medications and devices and diagnostic products and treatment regimens intended for human use, right? So another area that our students go down, as well as consulting. So you'll see that the job titles under consulting also are analyst or senior analyst, right? And our students are well suited for these types of roles because they support the clients in development, marketing, positioning, and regulatory strategy of their products. So having our degree be very broad in that sense helps our alumni go into roles that are also very broad, right? And so you have to understand the life cycle of how to get a product to market. And that's what our students learn through the program. So We also, under the medical affairs, so it's really the bridge between companies and medical professionals. And it becomes a great role for clinicians, right? So really to assist in obtaining government approval for drugs, devices, and products. And entrepreneurship. Well, there may not be immediate, as Verna showed earlier, is immediately going into a founder, C-suite type role. After a while, some of our students do transition to that and have their own companies. So that's another place that our students eventually go. So the next one is regulatory and quality. So whether that's a quality affairs specialist, quality engineer, quality assurance. And then the last is marketing and sales. And though this may not seem like a typical role for someone that's an engineer, what makes these roles great for our students is that they understand the technical sides of the product that they are marketing or selling in order to really connect with the end user client. And so you have to understand, right, the product, so that these roles are also really great roles, even though they might not seem as common, or it might not think as a direct linear pathway to these roles. So since we've given you the background of our students, we want to give you a sense of some of the first jobs that students have outside of MTM. So students that come in as an engineering undergrad, a lot of them you'll see do go into product management or industry engineering type roles, whether that's at big companies or smaller companies. You'll see that product management, engineering begets engineering in this case. So students that come in with a more life science background, the roles that they typically go into are research associate, possibly data science, process analyst, or consulting. A little bit more broad. And first jobs out of MTM that come in with a clinician background, whether that's an MD, RN, PharmD, etc., might be going into medical affairs afterwards or starting their own company. We want to give you an example of some of the companies that employ our MTM students. So it's a very broad range of companies. So you have some of the bigger companies like Roche and Genentech, and then there are also some of the smaller startups like Hinge Health, for example, on this visual. So some of the consulting firms, you'll see large firms like McKinsey, universities, there's governmental agencies, private industries. So this is just a small sampling of the companies where our students go after the program. So I just wanted to share some data with you about the job placement rates for our most for the class of 2021. So within 6 months of graduating, almost 80% have full-time work, and 12% do continue on with education. We're still gathering our information from our class of 2022, but this is the most recent that we have. So I want to go ahead and transition it back to Verna. And we'll introduce you to some of our alumni. It looks like one of our alumni is having technical difficulties, but we do have an alumni here today. So I'll transition it back to Verna.
Thank you, Joy. So now we'll get a chance to hear from hopefully at least one, but possibly two of our wonderful alumni. And I'm going to have them introduce themselves and also spend anywhere from 2 to 5 minutes telling your story. And then we'll have some Q&A. I'll kick it off with a few questions to kind of get things started. But as you have questions in the audience that come to mind, please just type them into the chat. Joy will be monitoring that, and we'll be gathering them up to ask questions to our alumni here. So Zoe Hurtado, if you could introduce yourself first, spend a few minutes, and we'll move on to Elizabeth to see if she's able to correct her technical difficulties or not. Okay.
Okay, perfect. So I can start. My name is Zoe. I graduated in 2020 from the MTM. And a little bit about me. I'm currently a senior project manager at Gilead Sciences. Before this job, I was at Genentech as a business process analyst. And both of these fields or both of these positions were more in the business side of pharma companies. But I can definitely speak to, project management and like business analyst types of roles if you have questions on that. Some background on myself. I graduated from Wake Forest University in 2018, and I graduated with a biophysics degree. So it was pretty similar to like bioengineering or biomed background. And I went into the MTM program, wanting to get into startups and just really wanting more of that business information and knowledge. Because, I did a lot of work in the lab during undergrad, and it was really fascinating, but I found that I wanted to be a little bit more on, the business side in an office, like collaborating more with people on like the vision for that company's future and whatnot. And so I went into the MTM program with that, and I, took some business classes, some public policy classes as well. And they were really helpful with, broadening my knowledge in all aspects of, the public health system or biomed companies, pharma, etc. And what really helped me land the job at Genentech was really utilizing the skills that I gained doing the co-op that every MTM student does, that internship with like a startup that, you do your school projects with. Even though that wasn't official, like an official kind of internship, I utilized it on like my resume, and I, put that my role in my team was a project manager, which it was. And, you might not think that because your official role isn't a project manager, it doesn't apply. It 100% does. And you can, use those skills and talk about them in interviews. Because, when I graduated MTM, I didn't have any official or formal job experience or work experience. It was just, straight out of undergrad and master's and nothing else. And so that was really helpful. And, I was applying to different titles just to see what they were about. And yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Great. Thank you.
Mhm.
I'm wondering if Elizabeth, do we have you on, and or are we still having technical difficulty? Can you tell Joy, or is Elizabeth here?
I don't see her
Okay.
on our list of participants right now.
Then let's move on, and I've got a couple questions to kick things off. So Zoe, can you tell us what were the most formative or impactful aspects of MTM for you?
I think the most important thing I learned was the product life cycle. And that also, we learned for medical devices, but also some pharmaceutical life cycles, because they have, different documents or different trials for drugs compared to medical devices. So knowing those two and, knowing what, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, the differences, I was really able to speak to those things in interviews, and it made, me sound super knowledgeable, even though I didn't have like official work experience. And so that was really great. And also working in a team for the whole year, and getting to know your teammates and, really learning how to work together for all types of different projects, taught me how to be very versatile and, agile. The whole, agile learning, that was really important. So yeah, that's what I'd say is the most important for me,
Great,
at least.
good. That's really helpful. I know I've been a hiring manager for decades for folks from entry-level engineers through manager level, and that's exactly true. If you are able to just speak to the process, even though you don't have tons of experience, a year here with MTM gives you enough knowledge that you've got a framework of understanding what it is in industry, what's functional roles, how does the whole product go through. And that means that as a hiring manager, you don't feel like you have to spend 6 months or a year helping someone shadow or train on that they really already have an understanding. And if they've got work experience, great, but if they don't, it still makes a manager feel a lot more comfortable that it's not going to be a lot of a learning curve. So thanks for sharing that. How about, I know you probably already touched on this, so let me know if there's anything else that comes up. What key skills or experiences prepared you for your roles after graduation?
Let's see, the key skills, I think the biggest one was learning what the difference between project management is and product management is. And, being able to, I watched a ton of YouTube videos as well to see which one I would like more. And speaking for project management, which is what I do and I love doing, it really takes someone who is naturally organized and likes to be organized to thrive in something like that. But project management can be put in so many different roles and thrive, such as my role as, a business analyst at Genentech. It was basically project management. It was just that additional aspect of also having to analyze like processes, helping, the clinical trial leaders, maybe they weren't documenting things as they should. And so you create templates for them and show them processes and document all their processes so that, if they're doing something very sensitive and FDA comes and they want to audit, they have everything ready and everything is, in templates and easy to read. And so that's something that some people overlook sometimes, but as, a project manager, you see your importance, even though sometimes you work in the back end of things and people don't really see what work you're doing. I've had both roles where I'm working in the back end and, I'm helping people out, through emails, but then I've also been leading projects and launching processes and things like that. So.
Great, thank you.
Mhm.
And what if you could give us a little bit of a snapshot? What's it like working right now as a project manager? And how did you become interested in that particular function?
Yeah, so my role right now is at Gilead Sciences, and this is more of a project manager that's a little bit more on the back end. I work with the systems that keep track of manufacturing lots. And so once a product is approved for a clinical trial, you need to manufacture that product in vials or and you have to bottle them and put proper labels on them and such. And so we have systems. We currently use like Jira, but there's other like software systems that help organize, due dates and like who from the team needs to collaborate to get that product manufactured and then launched to like different countries, because there's many countries we do clinical trials at. And so while, supply chain and quality assurance works together, I'm in the back end making sure that they connect even more. If they're missing a document, I can see everything and I know the whole process and I can know who to reach out to, and then I, make them connect. I'm that bridge between those two departments.
Great. I can see some questions coming in, so I do have another question, but let's switch so we make sure we have enough time for, because we have a good amount of participants in the audience, and I want to make sure we have time to answer their questions and address them. So Joy, maybe I'll let you read some of the questions from the chat.
Sure. So one of the questions you've already kind of answered, but I guess a follow-up to specific skills that the program taught you. But what about, were there any specific courses from the MTM program that help promote like the knowledge and stuff so you were able to be successful in interviews and land your first role at Genentech?
Yeah, I took, I think they were called public health policy classes in like the School of Public Health. It was like the introductory classes, but it gave such a breadth of knowledge on like, how health insurance works, like healthcare in different countries versus the US. And it made you see like different gaps. And working in a pharmaceutical company, that is really helpful because I understand a little bit more on, why certain drugs take longer to be developed and how they need to be shipped to different countries following their different processes and rules. But it also, just gave appreciation to launching drugs for clinical trials. Knowing, how expensive it is in the US, but, being able to be a part of that and accelerate that process, gave a little bit more of that patient vision that I think without those classes, I would maybe not see 100%. And then a really good one that just helped me have more of a business mindset it was in the School of Business, and it was like an MBA course, like intro to MBA, but you didn't have to be an MBA student. That one was interesting. It taught you like how to use different pathways in your brain, basically. Yeah, those are, I think, the best courses that I took. Also just the basic MTM course I think it's this semester you guys take it. I think it's at UCSF, and it's like the public health one. That one was really informative. So
Great. Thank you. Other questions, Joy?
Yeah. So I guess how many positions after graduation of alumni, at least that you know of, that they were able to use like their capstone project as like a direct launch into their next, into their position after graduation? So,
well, because I was a 2020 graduate, I actually roomed after graduating. I had a roommate who was a fellow MTM alumni with me in the same graduating class. And she actually launched her first career into a startup. Absolutely did not like that startup. So quickly transitioned back to her capstone project, which was EYES. And she became their product manager. I don't know if she actually presented to the MTM. Her name is Julia Martinez Franks. Yeah, she was my roommate for a year in San Francisco. But other than her, I think there were maybe just a small handful of others who basically their first position out of MTM was in their capstone. But many of us were able to just transition directly into like industry jobs. I know a lot of people had it. Some people at Genentech as well with me. And then a lot of digital health in my graduating class. And we're all happy to refer you to companies that we've, been at or currently are at. And so, just reach out to us on LinkedIn if you find a company you're interested in. And I would say almost 100% of the time, we are happy to refer you.
Our alumni network is strong, I guess you would say.
Yes.
Everyone is very well connected to each other and stays very well connected. So I guess another question for you, Zoe, would be, were you considering any other programs besides MTM in the beginning, right? Before launching into the MTM in your career? And given your role at Genentech and Gilead, did you ever just consider getting like a project management certificate instead of official master's degree?
So for the first question, I was really looking for 1-year master's programs that offered, that startup entrepreneurship knowledge, because I really wanted that business aspect. There are a couple, at least when I was searching in 2019 or 2018, there are a couple, like I know WashU has one, Rice University has one, Georgia Tech has one. And so I got into all of those, but I really enjoyed the MTM description because they had like a co-op as well as, you're right in the center of Silicon Valley, with all the great biotech companies. And I know Rice University and Georgia Tech have their own hub, but I feel like nothing beats the Bay Area in terms of startups or tech or biotech in general. And so that is what I really was looking for. And I think I got that. So in terms of the second question, can you remind me what the second question was?
Yeah. Did you ever consider just getting a project management certificate instead of a master's degree?
Yeah, so I've actually inquired this to senior managers at both Genentech and Gilead on their views of, that project management certificate, or like green belt as well, like the belt system. They think as an entry level, I mean, some companies look for it, but honestly, most companies look for just the experience you already have. They want those years of experience. And if you don't have those years, then on your resume, they want, specific bullet points of what you've done and, listing your skills, agile learning, organization, that kind of stuff. And so those certificates can kind of be overlooked. And even now, my manager, advises that I just focus on building my skills in general, like Excel and, people management. Like you want to be as well-rounded as you can as a project manager. And I guess later on you can do those certificates, but once you enter the barrier of project manager, because it's kind of hard to get into because it's such a niche thing, you can't like go to school to be a project manager. You kind of just pull together different skills to say you have project management experience. But once you get over that threshold, like I feel like you're pretty safe and you can build up in your career because of the experience of work you get.
Great. Okay, do we have any other questions, or does that wrap them up for right now?
I guess the only other question is, maybe it's more broad, is how often do technical backgrounds like benefit going into a project or product manager role? And like how involved in the actual science or technical details are you on a day-to-day basis?
Yes. It depends on what type of project management you're going into. There's the technical project manager, which he'll say it in the role title. I assume those individuals, they go into, depth on like, what is going on in the lab and what next steps need to, what needs to be ordered, what needs to be manufactured, this and that, working directly with the scientists. And they really need, the technical knowledge. I'm more on the business side. So right now, I work in the systems, but I work with like processes. And also at Genentech, it was like more like, helping HR develop more trainings, or like helping the scientists organize their lives, basically. But I wasn't directly working with the scientists on developing like clinical protocols. But there are those project managers, you just have to look out for them. But I think those are a little harder to get into entry level because they require more of that technical knowledge. But it's not impossible. So if you have that technical background, then definitely go for it. I did not. And so I veered away from the technical project managers.
That's a good point, Zoe, because my experience has been more on technical project managers. And I think that's a good point, that there are roles out there that are more business focused, and they're probably easier to get as an entry level coming out of MTM. But I think I found that it is true, like a lot of times, if you want to get in a more technical project manager role, then systems engineering is kind of, if you're in a larger company or a product that's more complex, where they have systems engineers roles, that's like a perfect pre-role before you become a project or program manager, because then you've already almost been doing a mini aspect of that role already, and you understand all the different functions, and you also understand how to bring technical folks together to solve problems at the system level.
Yeah. And to add to that, like I started my project management journey as a business analyst or business process analyst. Even though that sounds completely different, it was literally the same thing. It's just they don't look for, those like project management certificates that sometimes they're finicky about. So definitely in your job search, look for, business analysts, process analysts. And don't be afraid to like apply to jobs that don't have like a company listed on it. Like it's my first job, Genentech, was actually a contracting job. So it was like the third-party contractor. And then after the first interview, then you find out it's for like a big company. That happened like 2 or 3 times. Like one was for Abbott, one was for Medtronic, and then Genentech. And contracting roles, if you're able to do it, it's a great start. They take contractors very easily, and then you build your skills, and sometimes you're promoted to full-time very quickly. And if not, then you switch to another company as full-time, which is what I did at Gilead. And you have the skills to talk about. So
I also found that was really common, especially when COVID was even worse. Companies were very nervous about hiring new people sight unseen, when they really knew that they weren't going to be doing interviews in person. So that's been a great gateway to building a career, and probably still does right now, as we're still not fully out of the COVID era. So great, thanks for sharing that. I'm going to go back to then screen share and just finish up our presentation here. So I'm going to hand it off then to Joy. She's going to talk a little bit about MTM Career Services.
Okay, thanks, Verna. So as we mentioned during the Q&A, our alumni network is strong. So part of the career services is connecting you with that alumni network. Our alumni are paired up, volunteer and pair up with different affinity groups. And they will mentor our students in kind of a group setting, depending on which career pathway they want to dive into or possibly join in the future. We also have professional development workshops throughout the year, alumni and industry panels and chats. So getting to hear from alumni from different industries and different types of positions. And also, we offer grants to attend conferences and pursue certifications. So not only are there career services within the program, we also are paired up with the Fung Institute, which is to give you like full access to career development. So there's a bunch of different services that we offer the students as being part of the program. So then there's also the vast broader range of campus resources. So that's the main campus career center, different ventures like the Haas Healthcare Association. And since we are based at Berkeley and UCSF, we have access to all of the campus resources at UCSF. So another Office of Career and Professional Development, the Consulting Club, Innovation Ventures. So just the amount of resources that we have to help you launch your career and explore different types of positions before the program ends, so you kind of know where you want to launch into, is very vast.
So what makes our program special, in addition to all that though, and what I feel also makes it special just for me, is the people, the students that are part of this program, and basically living this shared mission of working in the healthcare space. So our alumni come from diverse backgrounds, like I'd mentioned, and they go on to take similarly diverse roles after the program. And it's really this deep passion for helping people and improving healthcare that makes us really the kind of the glue, that emotional connection between all of us. And the most exciting thing about my job, being this is new to me, is really seeing students go on to make a positive impact in the world. After so many years of being in industry, I actually almost kind of fell into this role. I started teaching, if some of you have seen on LinkedIn, I was teaching at Santa Clara University within bioengineering for the past 4 years, as well as consulting. And that seemed like just a marriage of two things kind of made in heaven, because I would have consulting roles and jobs and examples that I'd be able to share with students in the classroom, which I've started doing here at Berkeley. And then also with all the teaching and advising, I read up on lots of things that are latest in the industry, teaching practices, human-centered design, also student-focused learning. That's all new for me, and I like to be able to create a really positive impact on our students so that they can basically go out into the world and help develop new devices, coordinate clinical trials, develop new therapeutics, and get regulatory approval for new diagnostics and other things. So with that, even though we don't know very many of you yet, we acknowledge the talent and the passion that we hope that you could bring to this program, and which exists within all of you. So we would love to have you consider joining us. We'd love to have you apply and be part of our next cohort of students in the fall. So just a reminder that our applications are due exactly 1 month from today on June 6th. They're due by 9 p.m. So remember that. It's not midnight. We have a cutoff because our server is on the East Coast. So make sure that you apply, get things started. And if you have any questions, you can email us at any time. This email is easy to remember, mtm@berkeley.edu, is answered by either Joy or myself. And we would be happy to address any questions that you have that come up. That's all I've got. So I will stop sharing. And thanks so much to all of you for joining us. And a big thank you to Zoe for sharing your experience with MTM. Okay, I know then. Okay, thanks for all the comments back. Appreciate it. Okay, bye.